Thank you for watching this video. I'm going to show how I lost the game to a strong, pesky little junior opponent, and I really hate losing. Actually, my boyfriend, who's amazing by the way, can attest to that. So it makes you wonder every time you lose a game like this, how do I improve at chess? How do I become better so I don't have to lose as many games? And that's the focus of at least these first videos that I'm going to make. I'm going to focus on games that I've lost. I know it's almost always more fun to win games and to then look at the games and how you played brilliantly, but perhaps there is more to be learned from our defeats. So that's going to be my focus. I don't know how many videos I'll make. I certainly have quite some material, unfortunately. So I'll make a couple of videos at least. But let's dive into the first one here. My young opponent, my young and smart, serious junior player who's about 12 years old, and he looks like he's about um, maybe even younger, has a rating of 1878. So an absolute nightmare opponent for everybody. I think everybody who's played juniors know how dangerous they can be. They spot tactics, they're very, very serious, and often they improve at a very, very much quicker rate than the rest of us. So always dangerous. And he opens with a d4, and I play knight to f6, and he brings the bishop out. And I opt for a position that, or some moves that brings us to this position. And here I decide to shake things up a little bit from the beginning by playing b5 and sacrificing a pawn to get sort of a Benko Gambit-like structure, which I quite like. I haven't actually played it before in a serious game, but I've often struggled against it on the white side of things. So I wanted to try it out, and I think actually in this case I do get some added benefits compared to the classic Benko, because he decides to accept the pawn, which I think is the right decision, because otherwise I simply get too much momentum on the queen side, and after I give a check he has to bring the knight back. And now I can bring my knight into e4. I also probably had other natural moves, but this speeds things along a little bit, and when he brings his bishop back to defend, I can exchange it off. And here I'm quite happy with my position. Alright, I've given up a pawn, but compared to a regular Benko Gambit, I've gained a little bit of time, and I've exchanged off his dark square bishop. And that should give me a stronger control over the long diagonal and the dark squares. So that I kind of liked. I followed up with developing the bishop to a6. In case he wants to play e4, then I can exchange off this bishop as well. But he chooses a different way. First, he plays the queen to f4, which it's an extra move at this point with the queen, and he's already moved several of his pieces more than once in the opening, which is never sort of a textbook thing to do. It does threaten, however, and I'm glad I spotted that, because I almost just played the natural continuation of g6 and bishop to g7. But it does threaten to play the queen to a4 with a check to the king, forcing me essentially to exchange queens, which I didn't like to be forced into. It's probably not terrible for black, because I'm probably able to win back my pawn, but I just don't like to be forced into exchanges when I'm behind in material. So I played a slightly different move order. I played the knight to d7, and after the natural moves, he actually played the queen over to a4 anyway. So he spends yet another tempo with his queen, which I'm not sure I would have done, but he does pin my knight, and my king is forced to stay and defend this knight. So I can't just castle and leave this unprotected. So he does slow me down a little bit. I retreat my queen, attacking his b-pawn. He defends the b-pawn, and I develop my bishop. Now this is obviously a significant threat because he can't recapture with the rook hanging, so he withdraws his knight and protects the rook. Now I'm really happy with my position. I've got this monster of a bishop bearing down on his position. I've got an open file. I'm ready to add some pressure. There's a pin on this pawn, so his development is going to be a little bit slow that way. And I'm a little bit ahead in development. So I think I have quite good compensation for my pawn. But of course, the question is, so what's the best plan? And if he had not put his queen here, I would have castled and I would have brought this rook over into the action. Now I have to do it a little bit differently. So I start with this rook instead. And he decides to continue development. And this is, in many lines in the Benko, White's simply accepts to castle manually and exchange this bishop. But I think he makes the right decision here, both because this bishop actually gets a good home on h3, threatening my knight, but also because this bishop is not really that strong. I think actually in some cases it is a little bit in my own way, and my queen is tied down to its defense right now because otherwise the queen would be attacking it. So I would have been very happy to exchange these pieces off. Then I would have been loving all of my pieces. So I think he makes the right decision not to just let me simplify that way. I bring the rook down to b7, defending the knight so that I can castle. And here my junior opponent shows his absolutely annoying side for the first time in the game. I would have loved to just castle, but he does bring his bishop not to g2, but to h3, attacking my knight. Now I can't leave it, it would only be defended by the rook. So that is annoying, and I was faced with a decision, what to do about this. I can't withdraw my queen to defend it because that would leave the bishop. My king would like to castle, and it's just very difficult. I can't move the knight because it's in a pin. What do I do? He seriously limits my options with this move, so that makes it a good move. It's harassing me. It's interfering with what I would really like to play. So I play the move f5 to shut down this and to prepare my castling. And it's not a move I love playing because it is very committal and it opens up squares in front of my king, but it was the move that I thought was the least bad choice. So both players castle, and he plays the very natural move of rook to e1, preparing to get this pawn rolling, getting it out of the pin of the bishop. Very natural move. I guess at this point, no, I couldn't have taken here because even though that would have left this pawn hanging, I would still first have to deal with my queen, and I don't want to give up this. So maybe at the end of this I could win back material, but it would have been bad. So castling was the right decision. It was a natural move, and he plays it cool. And here there's a key moment, I think, in the game. How do I continue? I think I have several options here. We're kind of done with the opening, and now I need to find the right middle game plan. I could play this rook over. I could play it to b8, to c8. I could put this knight on this very nice square in the center, eyeing c4. I probably could also play to f6, but I'm a little bit afraid that white is going to play e4. And if I just place my rook here or here, playing e4, I wouldn't have the opportunity to recapture with this pawn because it would expose my knight. And moving this rook away would also then mean that this pawn would be undermined. It would be attacked by e4 and the bishop. So I kind of feel that he's just in time, or he's just about to be able to play e4. Key moment in the game. I had these options. Probably knight to e5 had been the strongest move, but I decide to be aggressive. I feel that my advantage is temporary because I'm ahead in development, but that's not a permanent advantage, and I have that pressure of being down a pawn. So I need to keep the pressure on. So what I decide is to play c4. To give up another pawn. It's not I don't think it's a healthy sacrifice, but it does force the exchange. So once he captures with his knight, and I think again he has to capture, because if he leaves this pawn, my knight could come to c5, harassing the queen. He can bring the bishop into d4. A lot of this will be cramping his position too much. So he has to take. He has to allow the exchange of another of his pieces. And then this comes with tempo against the queen. So I've exchanged my bad, or my not so good bishop for one of his key defenders. And now all of my pieces are strong and I have an initiative. But again, it's at the cost of an extra pawn. But that was my decision. He just draws his queen back to a4, but before, that was a nice square because it was eyeing the knight. It was keeping an eye on the bishop, so my queen had to stay and defend. But right now, there's not a lot to do for the queen on a4. So I don't quite understand why he drew back to a4. I think that was not the best, necessarily not the best move. And now I bring my rook over. And with ideas of maybe bringing my rook into the action. First c4, then maybe b4, attacking this pawn with all of my three heavy pieces. Now this is starting to look like something. So he moves his queen again, so as not to have his queen trapped in some scenario over here. So he moves it back to f4. A lot of queen moves at this point. And he took a long time to think about this. And again, this is a crucial stage in the game. I probably should play forward with my knight. Put it on c4, attacking b2. And if he tries to hold on to this pawn, I can harass his pieces. He can play something like this, and even though he defends this, I can capture with the knight. I get one of my pawns back. My pieces are still very strong, but I guess what maybe is not so appealing is there's no sort of clear win for white in this. He gives back one pawn, but he still has these two connected pawns that are kind of vacating this diagonal and shutting down the b-file attack, and now the c-file is going to be contested. So who wins this? And after he draws back the queen, attacking my knight again, I'm probably forced to exchange queens. And I think that white's okay in this position. White has solidified his advantage. So we probably have to go back to this moment where white has just played the queen to f4. And instead of this, I decide to play the knight back to f7. It keeps this diagonal open. It also adds the threat of playing the bishop to h6 with a lot of ideas of harassing this rook or forking this rook and this knight, and so he sees this, and then he draws the queen back all the way to c1, and this I think is too passive. I keep the pressure on with this move. Now he plays e4, but once I double up my rooks in the b file, this pawn starts to experience a lot of pressure. And obviously there's a very current threat of capturing this knight, which would win the game because you can't take back. So he decides to give back the pawn, and by playing b4, and once I capture with the rook, he defends with this move, and this is a mistake. He probably should have first played a3, and then after he exchanged with the rooks, he can recapture with. He should have played this move, and then once you capture here, you can capture back with the knight, and that sort of just holds everything together. But instead, he played this move, and I don't know if you can spot a good move for black in this position. While you look for it, I can say that a friend of mine was watching the game, and he saw it, and he told me afterwards. And when I showed this game to another strong player in the club, he spotted the moves. He spotted black's best move within a few seconds. So obviously, I was very annoyed that I didn't see the right move. The strong move in this position is to play the rook to b2, because now you open up the attack on this knight. You invade on this rank and you attack these pawns, and this is unraveling everything for white. So he can exchange the rooks, but now this piece needs to move, and once he moves, then these pawns are gonna die. Actually, instead of just taking this pawn with the rook right away, black can even add more pressure with this nice little combination, and you say, hey, wait a minute, what this bishop is, you can just take this bishop. Actually, you can't, because if you take this bishop, the rook will be hanging. So the only move after bishop to d4 is to move the queen to the only square you can while still protecting this, and then you can take this pawn. Again, making use of the fact that once the queen captures this piece, you take this with a check. And this is probably the best continuation, but it still gives white a significant advantage, because after you deal with the check, either by moving the king or the bishop like this, black grabs this, and he just has everything under control. Pressure against the king. He can draw back his bishop to this outpost. He can bring the knight in. There's so many comfortable moves, and black is a pawn up. So this is the move I should have seen, that after white played the queen to e3, this would have been a very strong move. I didn't see that, and I think psychologically, had there been a pawn on b2, it would have been a much easier tactic to spot. I felt I had another good move. Instead of playing the rook to b2, I played the bishop to d4. But now white gets a chance to run away with the queen, and was a basically little skewer that white had to deal with there. So I do get one tempo with this move and one tempo with this move. And that kind of seemed very attractive, right? So you see, okay, I wanted these two tempies and to put my pieces in good squares. But right now it's just no longer, I no longer have the same clever tactic. So I followed up with queen to a3. It looks daunting, but after rook to b3, white simply holds things together and he's consolidated his advantage. I didn't find anything better than to interject this. He took back with the queen, and now I had to retreat. He took on f5. I played g5 with the threat of catching his bishop, so his king dropped back to h1. I harassed the bishop. It dropped back, and here we are. Now I'm just seriously behind material. We've exchanged another set of pieces, and white is fine. Game continued, doubling of rooks, and now he's even managed to repair his pawn structure. He takes the semi-open file. I keep things a little bit together, but after queen to e3, it becomes apparent that now he can also threaten to invade on my king side, which has become very open. So really the position is lost here. White is up 2 healthy pawns, 3 if white manages to grab a7. And white has the better king safety. And this knight obviously is a very strong piece, but it's not gonna win the game. So I was running low on time, and I stopped keeping score at this point. But really, I did lose this position. Only a few moves later, he converted this very nicely, and the game was lost. And that is how you lose to a junior player.